Okay, no, thanks for the email. So in this video, I'm gonna try to cover, first of all, some tips, I suppose, in trying to balance orchestral playing with your personal development. And then number two, some of the you mentioned in your first long question that you have some tension in your playing, and that you wanted a better understanding of some basic strokes. And so I have a list of strokes here. I'm going to show you basic strokes. And then also on the other side, I have usually the kind of the order in which I would recommend a beginner to learn. You can use that as a reference. You're definitely not a beginner, but you can kind of use it as a reference and see like what my possibly flawed logic is in trying to get people to learn this specific order. Okay, so first of all, the orchestral tips. Okay, so when you're playing an orchestra, the biggest source of tension probably comes from two things, right? Number one, it comes from just physical confinement, right? You know, there's a stand partner here, your stand is over there, your legs, right? You gotta put your legs in a specific way so to not hit the knee. These physical confinements, as well as, you know, if you're in rehearsal for hours, as you are, you know, the slouching of the back, all these kind of things come together to create some potentially bad habits. Usually, yeah, very bad habits. Some of my teachers in the past, I've had some great orchestral players, like concertmasters of different well-known orchestras and philharmonics and stuff. But they always warned me against, well, basically their job, how in the potential perils and then how to avoid it and blah blah. So the physical confinement is one thing. The second thing is that maybe you don't have this problem, but for somebody like me, I cannot mentally always keep ahead of what the orchestra is doing. And this is a big problem because whenever you are reacting to something, your body won't do it in an optimized and poised manner, right? So for me, like, you know, I'm not the best sight reader, I'm not the best player, so when I see the orchestral music, you know, like sometimes it's easy and I get sloppy, but sometimes I'm just kind of focused on just immediately sight reading and playing the notes, right? Which is a kind of a reactive way of playing. So I realized that Mr. Roseanne used to always tell me, make sure your brain is ahead of your fingers, your brain is always ahead. And that helped reduce the tension, weirdly enough, as long as my mind could stay focused. And this, the length I could do this increased over time. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but like if there's a piece that you've played like a gazillion times, the tension in playing that piece is usually less than, let's say I threw I don't know, let's say I threw a Saint-Saëns concerto at you and said, sight read this now, performance speed, right? The tension in trying to sight read that is much greater for most people. And that happens in orchestra at a lesser level but for extended periods. And so getting to know the piece a little ahead of time, if possible, or as much as possible actually, and then getting used to always reading as far ahead as possible so that your mind is always ahead of your body as much as possible will help you to not react as much. And if you're not reacting as much, you know, the tension overall kind of it's reduced, and yeah, that's just an overall issue. And oh, with this last point, I noticed that it happened to some of my friends who were the best players. Like there were a few friends when I was back in school that I thought, you know, just were like, if they practiced more, you know, they would have been like just first rate, great players. Yeah, but like as they play more and more orchestra, their playing really changes into more of a reactive, as good as they are, more of a survival kind of way of playing. And to counterbalance this as well as the physical confinement, so those two problems with orchestra. I mean, the most obvious answer is to consistently spend at least a significant, like at least an hour a day of private good practice. So not like rush practice, like, oh my god, I did orchestra and I got to learn Paganini concerto by tomorrow I have a lesson. Not that kind of practice, but good practice, thoughtful practice where you can go slowly, feel, relax, breathe. That kind of practice is necessary to really counterbalance and keep your fundamentals physically and mentally stable. Now, personally for me, another counter, what do you call it? Counter method? It's a little brain fart. Anyways, a way of countering the problems in orchestra is to actually, if I have the time, let's say I'm single and I don't have a family and I have some time on my own, then it's to actually have the good practice sessions multiple times a day, because every time you start fresh, your focus is just that much better, and you can kind of focus on the obvious things without missing them. And so let's say in the you can do a practice session, focused practice session in the morning, at lunchtime, and then before you sleep. If you do that, then the entire day, even if you do orchestra and develop some bad habits in orchestra, you'll be reminding yourself 3 separate times with rests in between, that this is the proper way of playing the violin, and so resetting everything. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing that actually came to my mind, because that's kind of a general problem that just fixing one particular technique won't solve. It's more kind of an understanding of, what does orchestra do to you as a whole, and how to deal with it. Okay, now we'll talk a little bit about some of the strokes, and then this video, I just want to go over some of the strokes very briefly, and I want you to let me know which strokes you would like me to cover in depth. I'll devote a video or videos or a series, whatever is necessary for the stroke. This is kind of an overall general quick video. Okay, so I have here, I didn't finish the green slide, my bad. Basic strokes, right? Long bows, détaché, collé, spiccato, martelé, staccato. Probably should have tremolo, flautando, and ricochet, and a few others. And then on the right, I have the general order in which I like to teach these strokes. So I like to start with détaché. Okay, so let's say you're a complete beginner baby. Most people start with something like Twinkle Twinkle, like Mississippi Hot Dog, da 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 da. Very basic détaché, no hand, right? But it's just the ability to kind of relatively keep the bow straight as you move it back and forth. And then I move on to long bows, getting the arm stretched out, right? Long bows, staccato, right? With good articulation. Martelé, strengthening the leverage of the arm at the tip. So basically the tip is one of the weakest points for most of us. And then long bows again. Now at this point, the long bows will advance a lot. Like for example, if the student is good enough, the long bows might talk about a little bit of figure 8, and pull in, push out, but that more. A little bit of the following the shape of the stick as opposed to just flatly drawing the bow. And if the student is doing well, a little bit of, I think Dunis liked to do this, a little bit of practice with portato. Getting used to changing the weight within a single bow stroke. Anyways, more advanced long bows, very necessary to return to that. Collé. The reason I do collé is because collé forces you to use your smaller muscles. And détaché should be done with your smaller muscles, right? More of your smaller muscles involved. And a certain type of détaché at a certain speed, you should be able to do with just your smaller muscles, right? not just the arm and the smaller muscles doing a follow through, but actually just your smaller muscles. And so, in order to open up the hand, okay, by this point, the hand is probably not very well opened up. It's more just doing the strokes with your whole arm. But right here, collé is supposed to open up the hand more with different bow exercises, and then this time the détaché will be the more advanced détaché where you do it with the hand. Ricochet, I introduced it at this point because spiccato, sautille, and again later and more advanced longbows have a lot to do with letting the wood of the stick vibrate. Okay, so this sounds like tree hugger kind of violinistic tree hugger kind of stuff, but letting the wood vibrate, letting the violin vibrate, is really the key, right? And ricochet and learning how to do ricochet, the Roseanne bounce, and all that kind of stuff is the first step in, first of all, realizing that you need to let the bow do its thing, and then second of all, in leading to these strokes where, yes, you need some kind of physical control, but now you're introducing more and more, what do you call it, like letting the bow do its thing kind of stroke, right? Spiccato, yes, it's a controlled bounce. It's like bouncing a ball, slowly, usually. However, it is a mixture of letting the bow do its thing and controlling it. Sautille is basically doing détaché at very high speeds and then letting the stick just rattle. And long bows, once again, to get good tone, the key is not just mechanics, but it comes from like Lionel Messi has the ball stuck to his feet, right? You see great ball handlers, like I think Derrick Rose is a pretty good ball handler, right, in basketball. I mean, it's these great ball control geniuses. It's a mixture of control and letting and understanding how the ball moves when you do certain things, and working with the ball instead of just just controlling the ball the whole time. And that's the kind of long bows that is necessary to have good tone. And in my opinion, people can feel that more after they have more control and more experience with the bouncier strokes. Okay, so that's kind of the overall gist of the strokes that I was thinking of. If this is completely off topic, just off, a tangent from what you want, let me know and I'll cover exactly the way you want. So be specific what you want. Okay, so let's just cover, for now I won't go through the whole list. I'll just go through most of them. Okay. Long bows, I think we talked about it. I talked about the down bow and the up bow. So the general idea is that in a down bow, the wrist and the hand get activated after the elbow, the upper arm, reaches its limit of range of motion, right? It can't go any further, so now the hand and the wrist lead the way, okay? And then as you do the up bow, yes, the contact, with the middle fingers, you should be feeling the push or the pull with those fingers, but it's led by the upper arm and through the entire stroke. And then changing of the bow strokes, right? The key to smooth bow changes is to keep all the variables constant. So to keep the speed of the bow, the weight of the bow, and the placement of the bow as constant as possible. Not change, just changing the direction. Okay. Now with long bows, I would suggest that some people like to call it following the curve, the shape of the bow. A little bit of curvy, scoopy motion is necessary to produce a tone, because the bow is elastic, first of all, and then second, once you create the friction, you got to let the instrument breathe. And so this curvy motion is kind of like creating friction and weight and contact, and then letting it breathe. And doing that kind of wavy motion continually is very essential. Now, with people like you, with long arms, Um, it's not a big difference with long bows. However, the point at which your upper arm stops moving and then comes up to is a little different. People with longer arms and narrower shoulders will probably look a little more like this, okay, more like a praying mantis. If you look at Sigiri, people with broad shoulders and short arms will look a little bit more like they're using their upper arm a lot. Okay, they don't have as much arm to work with, so they got to use everything they have. Whereas people like you with long arms, long neck, and for now you have narrow shoulders, you'll probably fill out, and this will obviously change then too. But then the amount of upper arm movement is less. The angle also changes, but I think you know how the angle changes depending on your proportions. And then the next step with détaché, okay, the modern détaché that I think it is most useful. Détaché is supposed to be detached, and if you get into what it actually means and blah blah, yes, it's easy to start doing like detached kind of bow stroke. But the most useful détaché is a medium fast stroke, where the hand is in control, okay, the wrist and hand, and it's a small stroke. But it's just going on and on like a train, okay? Kind of like the stroke that we need for, let's say, the D minor Allemande. Right, if you do this stroke, if you play the song and you go, this is kind of weird, I don't know, scoopy kind of bowing, which is more detached. It's not the way it's supposed to play. So you're supposed to keep it glued. Glued all the time, and same thing as the easy example, probably Kreutzer or Wolfart. Just back and forth, almost like you're scrubbing, to put it in a more vulgar way. And that's the overall idea of the modern détaché. It's most useful. With a staccato, well, actually, let's deal with martelé and clé first. So martelé, okay, all you're doing is you're starting from the string, creating a lot of potential energy, weight, right, and then moving it fast and with speed, like release with speed and stopping. So a lot of potential energy, fast speed release, and then stop. Well, potential energy again, reset, stop, stop. Okay, that's the idea. Very simple, right? Staccato is the same thing. Oh, with martelé though, you do it mostly at the tip. So turning your hand a little bit, okay, to get more angle, better leverage into the bow is key. Okay, that's very, very, very important. Leveraging the upper arm there to get that grip. Okay, and at first, leveraging that will, if you don't do it consistently, it's going to feel a little bit like it gets a little tense. So I don't think that strengthening is a solution to everything in violin. I think it's a combination of strengthening, proper angles, understanding, and consistent practice and all that. However, even if you do it correctly in the beginning, you might feel like if your upper arm isn't used to it, you might need to practice it over a period of time consistently until it actually feels less tense and more like you have the technique down. Okay, so I'm just saying it requires practice. Martelé, and then staccato. I would start in the middle, and with this you can have more of your hand involved, right? The same idea as martelé. You start with potential energy or weight, and then you release it quickly in a shorter bow stroke. Stop. Right? And then stop, stop. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, excellent. Now, after staccato, we have collé. Okay, so collé is basically like the frog. It's a grip and round circular release stroke where you play like this, right? And to develop this, I think we talked about this. You can practice opening up the smaller muscles using pencils, pens, and then practicing the middle of the bow. And then there's a whole routine you can do to open up this hand if you have trouble doing it, or if you feel like you keep slipping. Okay, weirdly enough, rather than playing the violin a lot, the very basic and silly bow exercises, like what beginners do with holding the bow, do your bow raises, and then go up and down, crawl up the bow, grab the bow again, do the bow. If you do this consistently, what is amazing, I found, I never wanted to do that until I started teaching younger people, right, younger kids, and I was forced to do it with them, and then all of a sudden my bow grip became very stable. And so I started to incorporate it into my practice. I just really disliked the idea, but I tried it, and yeah, it really, I used to have the problem where I would just creep up the bow, lose my bow hold, and I would be playing like, let's say some of the harder material in violin music, Paganini Caprices. I was playing the Corpi no Mi Sento, and I was playing the Corpi no Mi Sento. I remember I was like 16 or something, and I was so like excited by the music. It was hard, and I felt awesome, right? And and of course my bow hold was like this by the end of the song, and I could never really fix that. And then it was until later when I was forced to teach little kids. Not forced to. My good friend asked me to sub. It was my first time, and I kept doing this, and then all of a sudden my bow grip was stable, less tension, and I could keep it. And it didn't hurt before, because what happened before was, because I couldn't keep the basic bow hold, it would slip. I would start to eat into the leather. I had a really nice violin shop that used to do very nice I guess animal lovers will hate me for saying this, but like nice leather, different from different animals. Hopefully they were not killed for that, but anyways, very nice, expensive, grips and stuff, but I wore through all of them all the time, pushed right through them. And I even ate into the wood. I had some nice bows, and yeah, I would eat into the wood, and I wouldn't be able to control it as much, but I would be still playing pretty okay. It was just, I knew that I didn't have the fundamental control, but that these kid basics really solved my problems. Okay, so with those exercises, if your hand is opened up and your bow hold is fairly flexible yet secure, collé should be fairly easy. It's using the smaller muscles at the frog, right? And yeah, this knowing how to activate the stroke will save you a lot of trouble, because sometimes we try to do this stroke with our arm. Tires us in orchestra, and well, normal playing, like solo playing too. It's very tiring, but if you activate it correctly, much easier. And then spiccato. So spiccato, honestly, this isn't really worth delving into in great depth or practicing until the bow hold and the détaché and the collé and perhaps some ricochet have been practiced. I know that's not, usually you learn spiccato earlier, so I'm kind of sounding like a lunatic here. But spiccato, all it is just, you bouncing the bow, right? So the different speeds of spiccato is basically the détaché that's bouncing at whatever speed, right? It's literally bouncing off, right? With actually a decent amount of control. So you're not just doing this, you're kind of catching the bow as it bounces off the string. So as it bounces off, you kind of catch it and then set it up for the next one. Once again, it's better if you do all these other strokes a little bit like before revisiting spiccato, in my opinion. However, the basic idea is that you start from off the string, you drop it, and then the bow will bounce, right? But if you don't control it, it'll do this, right? So as it bounces, you actually have to physically pick it up and then drop it again. Okay, bounce, pick up, let it 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 bounce, pick up. Okay. Yeah, so to practice this, I mean, obviously the best way is just to experiment with open strings. And feeling, oh, this part of my bow kind of bounces as too clicky here. You should get a little more on the side of the bow to get the softer bounce where it's less clickety. You need to go a little closer to the fingerboard, but not on the fingerboard for normal spiccato. And also be on the side of the bow, because that cushions the bounce, so you won't get the, right? You will get more. Okay, so turning the bow, dropping it, and then catching it as it rises, and then re-dropping it every single time. Because it's that mix that's of control and letting go, that's why I like to revisit it after ricochet, which is really letting go much more, and then collé, which is extreme control, and then so you have the extremes of letting go and control kind of in your repertoire, and then you also would do sautille, which is basically détaché at high speed, but where the hair never leaves the string. So it's important that you feel, know, and are comfortable with the idea that sautille is completely different from spiccato. It's just you going very fast and again letting the stick rattle bounce by itself. And once you realize that that's sautille and the spiccato is completely different, it gives you a clearer picture of what what it isn't, because those two get kind of jumbled and then it becomes like what, Okay, so all right, so that covers some of the most basic strokes. Tremolo for me. Stay on the side of the bow. Be near the fingerboard. But once again, détaché is so important. If the hand is opened up, the bow grip is correct with the wrist able to kind of drop down a little bit, then you can do it completely with your smaller muscles. Okay? Of course, the quality of the, what kind of tremolo you want, it can change, but that's the physical key. Okay? All right. Well, I haven't covered upbow staccato. I mean, I have a long video on that, which I can share with you, and downbow staccato and a few other strokes. But let me know if these are the kind of strokes that you want me to go into detail, and any specific questions that you might have. And yeah, I'll see you later.